Hello, fans, and welcome. It's official, the Arizona Coyotes have relocated to Utah, and while the season is over, the fun is about to begin. I'm Randon, and alongside my co-hosts Dustin and Ryan, we will bring you inside the team, giving you all the news, highlights, and an in-depth analysis on everything the NHL in Utah has to offer. Welcome to another episode of The Two-Line Pass. Hello, fans. Welcome back. Welcome back to the Two-Line Podcast. Thank you very much for joining us. Episode 2 of the Utah hockey team's finest podcast. I'm Randon, once again here with my co-hosts, Dustin and Ryan. Today we have a pretty exciting topic. The NHL is new to Utah, but hockey is not new to Utah, and we know that NHL fandom is not new to Utah. So what we're talking about today, who have you been a fan of in the past, and are you going to switch? Is it okay to change your fandom? That's the topic today. Is it okay to change your fandom? We're going to start with Dustin. Dustin, why don't you give us a rundown? Who you like, why you like them, what do you think?
All right, so I said in episode 1, I'm a fan of the Dallas Stars. That came about because, when I was getting into my teen years and actually starting to pay attention more to sports and play sports, and especially there were NHL games on the Sega Genesis that were a lot of fun to play. It was like the late 90s, and one of the games that I played. It was, I don't remember what year it was, but the default teams that you played with were the Stars and the Sabres, because it was following the 99 Stanley Cup Finals where the Stars and the Sabres played, and I would play as the Dallas Stars. I was already a Dallas Cowboys fan, so I was like, oh, I'll play as the Dallas Stars. And, I'm sitting there and I'm scoring goals with wraparound goals in that game with Mike Modano and Brett Hull, and I liked Roman Turek as my goalie instead of Belfour, despite the fact that he's a Hall of Famer. But that's sort of how I grew into my fandom, and that's why I also sort of think it's going to be a little easy to switch my fandom from the Stars to the Utah hockey team this upcoming season, just because it's nobody that I've ever been fully invested in before. It's just sort of hey, the Stars did well. Hey, the Stars look good this year. And despite the fact that they're a top 2 or 3 team in the NHL this year, and they're probably going to win the Stanley Cup, it's still going to be easy for me to walk out, just sort of like Steve Young, and just go out on top, throw the monkey off my back. All right, I got a cup. Now I'll go support the young upstart team. And it's easy to do because I just wasn't fully invested in the Dallas Stars. It was just more kind of casual. And now we're going to have local radio and podcasts and all this sort of information that you can take in and listen to and learn about the team. I'll know the team's roster top to bottom, and through during this podcast, it wouldn't surprise me if we talk to some of them and meet some of them, and that makes it a whole lot easier to root for a team. So it's just the ease with which you can move from a team that you've just kind of casually followed, that's been states away from where you are, to something that's homegrown and close to you, makes it easy, and it makes it acceptable to switch your fandom.
All right, you've heard it here first, Dallas Stars. You're out. Well, after they win the cup. So you matter not. You're not an important franchise. Certainly not enough to gain Dustin's loyalty. So get on out of here. Thank goodness I don't really like the Stars either. So except for I do like a couple of their players. We'll get into that a little later. But so Dustin, he's on the yeah, you can switch bandwagon, and I like it. Ryan, do you agree? Do you disagree?
Well, here's the thing. It depends, because Dustin says he was a Dallas Stars fan playing from the 99 Cup Final. I somehow miraculously turned out to be a Buffalo Sabres fan. Yeah, by the way, 99, no goal. Brett Hull's foot was in the crease, no goal. Can't call that double overtime. But I don't think you necessarily have to abandon a franchise when you get a local franchise. Because, like, yeah, we haven't had one here in Utah to cheer for other than the Grizzlies, and that's not the same thing. So, like, I grew up in a house where my sister was a Penguins fan. My mom and my other sister were Avalanche fans, and then my mom jumped ship to being a Penguins fan. And then Randon was a fan of everybody playing the Penguins. And so he was. And the other cool thing is we grew up in the time of Ovechkin versus Crosby. Randon was, Team Ovechkin all the way. My other family was Team Crosby. And so I never really, being a fan of one hockey team, it never really, like, why? Why do you only have to cheer for one team? Like, why can't you cheer for, like, different teams, different players? But I also don't think you should jump ship at every team who wins a cup. You know what I mean? Like, don't be that guy who was a Lightning fan for their run and then immediately, or then, was a Blackhawks fan in 2013 or a Kings fan in 20, you know what I mean? But I think you could stick to your team. Yeah, I think you could still have a team. Like, so I'm a Sabres fan. Like, I'm not going to just stop cheering for the Sabres. They've been breaking my heart for 13 years. I'm not just going to jump ship after 13 years of missing the playoffs once Arizona comes to Utah. Because I'm going to be honest, what are the odds Utah makes the playoffs this year? Probably not great. Just being honest with the guy, hot take, probably not great. So I'm not going to abandon my Sabres either, but they're going to be the new backup team. They're the back burner. Still going to cheer for them, but Utah will be the new team. So yeah, I think it's totally fine, but you don't have to abandon the other team that you were cheering for.
You know what I think, if you polled people about their perception of Utah, I think what you've described, this whole, everybody can get along. You could be fans of multiple teams. That's kind of that's on brand for what the perception of what Utah is. So
hey man,
I do like that you're bringing it.
Yeah, why can't we all be happy? Rising tides raise all ships. We can all be happy, guys. We can all get along.
Hey, go for it and have those backup teams. Like you said, in our family, there was a lot of switching, and I think it was the timing with a lot of sports and a lot of fandom. Like Dustin, you mentioned that story. It was a timing thing. Maybe had the Stars and the Sabres not made that particular playoffs and not been featured in that video game, who knows? We could be talking about you being a Los Angeles Kings or Detroit Red Wings fan or anything, just by sheer timing. And I think that's where my fandom started too, was just timing. But I am going to take a more concrete, absolute stance, and I think not only is it okay to jump ship, that you have a moral obligation to jump ship and cheer for a local team if you have no other time in history had that option. And let me walk you through why I think this way, because I have been criticized multiple times in public and private for jumping ship on teams. So let's run down Randon's fandom. So I've been a fan of hockey in Utah for many, many years, since I was a young lad. And when it came time for me to cheer for an NHL team, wouldn't you know it, that same year, Utah got a minor league hockey team back. That's right. Originally, the Salt Lake Golden Eagles had jumped ship. They left for Detroit. They became the Detroit Vipers in the early 90s. And there was no more hockey in Utah, at least not at the professional level. Well, then, once you know it, the Colorado Avalanche inherit the Hartford Whalers in the mid 90s. And now Denver has a minor league hockey team that has nowhere to go. And so Utah inherits that team, becomes the Utah Grizzlies. And because I was so grateful to the great state of Colorado and Denver, I became a Colorado Avalanche fan. It also helped, timing wise, that same year, the first year the Colorado Avalanche were in business, they won the whole thing. So now I've got a local team that takes my fandom, and the NHL team that caused that all wins the Stanley Cup. So I immediately became a Colorado Avalanche fan. I went all in, invested everything. I currently, to my right, have a Joe Sakic jersey, a Colorado Avalanche jersey in my closet, and I cheered for Colorado for the rest of my days. That is until the Las Vegas Golden Knights franchise was announced. I am a big proponent of proximity and cheering for the local team. Proximity wise, Las Vegas is closer than Denver. And so I had a moral obligation to jump ship and cheer for the Golden Knights. And you're welcome, Golden Knights, because of my fandom. You won a Stanley Cup. I was with you, lifelong fan, and I can't tell you how long we Golden Knights fans waited for that cup. My goodness, we hashed it out in purgatory for a long, long time, and we finally won our
Oh,
cup.
the horrors.
We finally won our cup. But guess what, guys? It turns out that the Las Vegas Golden Knights maybe manipulate some long-term injured reserve listings and play some games with some salary cap. So I can no longer, in good conscience, support that team. And I have to.
Their own captain throws his teammates under the bus. So can't support a team that does that.
Pack of cheaters in my book. So I am now going all in on the Utah hockey team. But I do think there is some merit to sticking with team. Namely, here's the one exception to my rule. I think you two should both completely ditch your old teams and consider them vile, horrible people and go all in. The one exception to my rule is if you are a transplant. If you had grown up or lived in an area that had an NHL team and you've been a fan of them, and then you moved to Utah, especially if you moved to Utah against your will. Maybe you're younger, maybe you're 15, 16, and you grew up in Minnesota, you're a young kid from St. Paul, so you're out there playing some pond hockey too. Sure, you can still cheer for the Minnesota Wild. But that's the exception. You had to have a local team at some point in your past, and you had to have lived in the city of the local team. If you cheered for any other geographical area, if you cheered for the Penguins, if you cheered for Washington, whoever you cheered for before, now if you're in Utah, you have to join the Utah Hockey Club. There's no argument about it. You're in. You're on the wagon from now on.
Okay, but what if I worked at Buffalo Wild Wings for like 8 years? That's basically like living in New York. That counts. That's covering me as a Sabres fan. So I'm keeping it. Your argument is invalid.
I don't like it. That doesn't feel right. I agreed with everything Randon said. What you just threw out there sounded like madness. Buffalo Wild Wings is like New York?
Yeah,
you sound like Michael Scott running across the street talking about how he's going to get a New York slice and go into Sbarro's.
Yep. Yeah, same thing.
Buffalo Wild Wings. Get out.
The Buffalo Sabres, don't get me wrong, some of my favorite players have played for them, but they're a terrible franchise. Dominic Hasek.
Damn it.
All right. That's on you. You set the bar too low.
Yeah, that one's on me.
You know what though? I do like, and I think there is some nice thing about not having a local team, but I feel like at some point you start finding teams to cheer against, and you find situations where you don't have anybody to cheer for, and you just don't want some team you don't like. Generally, a team from Boston, because they've won so many times throughout all the sports that you just don't want to see them win again. And I didn't like
or
that.
Any Canadian team.
Exactly. I just want to be invested. I just want to love the team. And I want to, even if it means living in mediocrity, because I think if there's any Arizona Coyotes fans listening to this podcast, I got to hand it to you. You stood by the Coyotes, and a lot of those teams were just not good. And that's something that Utah's going to have to realize, that we are not a expansion team. We're not going to have the same luxuries that the Las Vegas Golden Knights did, and we may not enjoy the immediate success that the Golden Knights did. So there's a lot of excitement around your fandom, and you're going to have to, I think, channel your Jazz fandom if you're a fan of both teams, and kind of realize that there's some building that still needs to happen. I hope that there's a lot of excitement. I think there's going to be a lot of fun hockey to watch. But Ryan kind of alluded to it, Dustin, as well, is we're going to have to temper our expectations. And let me ask you to this, because this is something I thought about. I watched the fans give that Coyotes team a welcome in Utah. I saw the excitement. I saw the passion on the fans at the tarmac at the airport. I saw the event at the Delta Center, and we gave the Coyotes a excellent reception. It was awesome. It was a lot of you fans. You came out and you really showed the team that you're going to be there. Ryan, Dustin, let me ask you something. If we don't have immediate success, is that fandom sustainable? Is Utah going to show that level of passion if the team misses the playoffs year one?
I think that just Utah is very hardcore with their fandom. And I think with them being a brand new team and just the initial excitement, that's going to buy them 2 to 3 years of where the hockey team can be bad before attendance starts to suffer. But I don't think it's ever really going to get to a point where they're in the bottom half or bottom third of the league in terms of attendance. Like, I'll compare them to the Jazz. The Jazz were very bad this year. Like, they started off okay and then went into full on tank mode, and they finished with like the 5th or 6th worst record in the NBA. They were still top 15 in terms of attendance. They had 18,000 people go to, at least sold 18,000 tickets to each home game throughout the year. Like, there's still the support there, even though the team and the results were not very good. So I think the hockey team has built in 2, 3, maybe even 4 years just based off the excitement of it. But I don't think it's ever going to really fall off.
I think that if fans understand right away and out of the gate that the team we're inheriting, like, yes, they are an NHL team and they have some good talent and we should be excited about it. Good hockey teams don't move from their cities. You know what I mean? Like, good hockey teams, they need to stick around. And I'm not saying Arizona's bad by any means, but we didn't make the playoffs. We didn't make the playoffs last year. It's been a while, you know? And if the fans can understand that, and if the owner, Ryan Smith, goes into this with an open mind, willing to spend money to get players on the team and pay, you know what I mean? Then I think he'll be able to convince people that, yes, we should go, and yeah, they should come play here. Because Utah seems like a great place. Every concert I've ever been to, bands talk about how much they love playing here because of how excited and how good the crowds are. I can only imagine that we would do the same thing for a hockey team. And that does help. I think if you have fans behind you, your hockey team is going to play better. Like, they had no one in Arizona, really, at a 5,000 seat arena. That's nothing. They had no support. But here, we showed them what we can do just for a press conference, let alone what it's going to be for the actual season. And I think the people of Utah are more forgiving and more, like, understanding than the average city. You know, I feel like we'll be able to handle a lot, like a losing season or two to start off, and we'll be like, all right, it's okay. You know, we can work through this. Let's get this. We got this. But as long as we stick to those and we know it's going to be rough at the beginning, and everything will be fine.
I hope that's the case. I really do. I know that that this is a city and a market and a state that that has enjoyed sporting success a lot at the collegiate level, and some really fun runs with the Utah Jazz. Obviously, not culminating in a championship, but I'm hoping that has also tempered the expectations, and certainly Utah doesn't have the media expectations as, say, a Los Angeles or New York, or in the case of hockey, a Canadian market. And I hope that works. But I want to see fans in the stands. I want to see fans consistently. I am super excited that Utah's not necessarily a destination city, but maybe with skiing and stuff. If you guys remember, if you think back at the first couple of years of Las Vegas, 6 years ago when they first came in, those first few seasons, almost every regular season game, it was a visiting players stadium. Obviously, Vegas has a built-in travel and tourism industry. Just the city alone, right? One of probably the most visited cities up there, certainly in America. And then you add a professional sporting team. Fans want to go to Vegas because it's Las Vegas first and foremost. And if they get to see a hockey game while they're there, that's just great. And so you saw a lot of visiting fans, and I really hope that we don't see that. I'm hoping that the opposing fans aren't going to travel to Utah like they would have Vegas. And and I want to see some sellouts, and I want to see some sellouts even with a down year in years 2, 3 if we don't have immediate success, which I'm hoping we do. Uh, it's reasonable to expect that we won't. And I really hope that fans will continue to stick by, want to keep that excitement level high. If we have some turnover in the team, I hope that they take some time to get invested in the players, especially with the GM's kind of philosophy and mentality of drafting and building teams. I'm hoping that we see some long-term contracts, some homegrown people who sign extensions after their rookie years, and we start to see jerseys that you buy in season one that are still good 8, 9, 10 years later. Clayton Keller, who is our captain, who's been there, he's re-signed with the team, has been there for his entire professional career, and I hope that other players follow suit with him and stick with it, so that fans can really start to build those relationships and stick with it. So we're not having the conversation in 6 years of, what could the Utah fans have done different, and what teams are we going back to? We left some teams, and who are we going back to? And so I really hope that we can establish those relationships and get that fandom and gather a whole new generation of hockey fan that may have been there, but now maybe guaranteed with the local team.
And I think you will, because you saw as soon as the season ticket pre-sales were available, there were I think within the first couple of hours, I think like 8,000 orders of season ticket pre-sales as soon as they became available. So I think it wouldn't surprise me if the hockey team had sort of like a home sellout record, like streak, kind of like the University of Utah football program does, where just game after game after game is a sellout, especially right up front, because the excitement is like, it's at a peak right now, and people want to go and they want to support the team, not just purebred, like already know the game NHL fans, but like I've seen from a lot of people just on Twitter, people who don't even know the game are like, I'm excited for this. I want to learn about the game. Who can take me to a game and teach me about it? Who's willing to talk to me about this game and teach me about it? Those types of people are going to be there, where those types of people, they're not going to be going to like to Red Wings games and Avalanche games and stuff like that, because those teams have been there forever. It's going to be happening here in Utah, though.
Yeah, I love that. I love that that level of excitement exists in other sports, and that just transfers to the Utah team. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk here in the coming weeks. We're going to start to talk about the players, and so you guys can start to learn the players, because let's be honest, we've got a Dallas Stars fan, we've got a Buffalo Sabres fan, we've got a Las Vegas Golden Knights fan. How many of us in Utah were Arizona Coyotes fans as a diehard sport? Probably very few, and the team's success probably played a factor in that. But we're going to go over. We're going to start to, I think, homegrown build those relationships for you as we start to explore the team, get to know the players, both through their conversations with the local media and through our discussions of them. And we can start to build that. And I hope that the you know the fans can start to talk about these things and talk to their friends, their family, listen to us. Obviously you're not going to know much unless you're listening to this podcast. We're going to give you the tools that you need to be your own hockey fan. And when you're listening, when you have that community, when you have that type of support, I really think it'll take the fandom to the next level. Right now the media in Utah is super hyped up about hockey, and there's still a lot of room for growth. Even the media personalities are admittedly still learning the game and growing, and that passion's just going to build and develop over the next few years, and we're going to help you build that excitement right here. Talking about excitement, there is one thing that gets fans pumped up, and that is goals. And if you're a fan of hockey, you know that there is the goal song. What's the song that plays when your team scores? And we talked last episode about what the team name is going to be, but let's talk about the nitty gritty details. Justin, what do you think the goal song is going to be for the Utah hockey team?
You know, it wouldn't surprise me just because this is Utah, and Utah tends to do stuff like a little corny, a little like too obvious, too in the face, just corny for lack of a better word. It wouldn't surprise me if we see that first goal hit the back of the net and then they start playing like "We Will Rock You" by Queen or "We Are the Champions," just like Mighty Ducks like inspired music, just because like, oh, it's hockey and we have hockey and that's the hockey song. Mom, Dad, that's the hockey song from the hockey movie. I'm hoping it's not that, especially at least not "We Are the Champions." It wouldn't surprise me also to see something like Imagine Dragons or some like family friendly like pop rock song. But I'm gonna kind of from left field say I think we might go the same direction as like RSL did, where they have a fan written song, like an original song. It was somebody from like a local band, was it like The Used or something like that? A member of a band wrote that song that became like the RSL anthem. It wouldn't surprise me if Utah wound up using something like that that's just homegrown and homemade, like written for the team, instead of just picking a popular song.
I absolutely love that idea. I had not thought about that. I absolutely love that. Ryan, what do you think? Do we go locally sourced or do we go pop?
I think we're going to go with local and pop. Big local Utah band that at least they had a couple hits was Neon Trees. And I think they have a couple good songs like Animals. That one's got a good chorus that could work for a goal song. I tried to find an old Donnie and Marie song, and Puppy Love just doesn't work for a goal song. I don't think they'll go with The Used. It would be cool. They're another Utah band, but it's going to be, I think Dustin's probably right. It's going to be some poppy generic thing until they can figure something else out. But it was the drummer from Rancid who wrote that song, by the way, Dustin.
That's what it was.
The drummer of Rancid. Who is from Utah. He is from Utah, I believe.
I knew there was local ties. I didn't know if the band itself was from Utah or if it was just somebody in the band, but I remember it being written by somebody who's like from Utah and a big soccer fan who wrote that anthem. And
I mean, hey, if he could write a soccer anthem, it wouldn't be too much harder to write an NHL anthem. I mean, for God's sakes, the Boston Bruins use "Shipping Out to Boston" by the Dropkick Murphys. That song has 8 lyrics or 8 lines in the song. It's not hard to write a good theme song. I mean, it's not hard, but it's not easy, but you know what I mean? Somebody could do it.
Dustin, you brought up "We Are the Champions." Of course, my vote, which I think is the most iconic hockey song, is, of course, Rock and Roll Part 2 by Gary Glitter. And the only lyric in that is, "Hey."
Hey.
So that's all I want.
Hey.
Hey. I just think that to me is always the iconic goal song, but I am kind of in agreement with you, Dustin. I think Utah might lean towards something like Imagine Dragons, maybe Muse, the Walker and the Fritz, the people who do the I Can Make Your Hands. I can't. What the band?
Your hands clap.
I can make your hand clap, kind of thing. That kind of thing. Like I think Utah's going to go with that.
Do we know what Arizona did? Because I know some teams, each player has a goal song. Like the Buffalo Sabres, each one of their players has a different goal song because they get to pick theirs. Jeff Skinner always picks a song from either High School Musical or Taylor Swift as his goal song because he's a girl dad, I think.
A quick search suggests that the Arizona Coyotes' goal horn is "Howlin' for You" by the Black Keys.
Hey, you know what? I'm actually okay with that. I am okay with that. Sure, so we're not the Coyotes anymore, but I can work with Howlin' at the Moon. Like, it works with Coyotes, but I like it.
Well, we're going to see as the season comes up. We're a few months away from finding out what that goal song is. We're still waiting on what the team name is. But whatever that team name is, I hope that you guys have enjoyed the discussion today. I truly hope that you joined the Utah hockey team fandom. Even if you don't sever your ties with your previous team completely, we still want you aboard. We still want you rooting for the local team. Dustin, Ryan, do you have any closing thoughts?
Follow the podcast, follow us on Twitter, follow us on whatever podcast feed. Listening to this podcast is going to make you a better hockey fan. So follow and listen.
Yeah, pretty
Ryan,
much just follow.
wake up.
I'm good, man.
Closing thoughts. Hit us with them. Go Stars.
Is cereal a soup?
No, cereal's not a soup,
that's
guys.
a question.
Guys, at
That's
the
the same
Two-Line
thing.
Pass on Twitter, at the Two-Line Pass. This is the Two-Line Pass podcast. You can listen to us on all of your favorite podcast platforms. We're going to be coming at you every single week. Thank you guys for taking the time. We appreciate you, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Two-Line Pass podcast. Please follow us on Twitter at the Two-Line Pass. You can follow Dustin at HighlightsUt. You can follow Randon at TLP Randon and Ryan at CarnsRyan0420. During the off-season, new episodes of the podcast drop every Wednesday with bonus episodes throughout. And during the season, we will have our weekly show plus game day episodes so you don't miss a minute of the action.